Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, was one of my most anticipated movies of 2024, and I had been a huge fan of Mad Max Fury Road back in 2015. This film has been a long time coming. Director George Miller had initially wanted to make this film as an anime, however he decided he wanted to make it live action instead. Initially the plan was to bring back Charlize Theron in the role of Furiosa and de-age her. However, because the technology still isn't quite there yet, according to the director, he went on to cast Anya Taylor-Joy in the role. It does make sense that they would go and cast a younger actress, and it appears that they looked at initially casting Jodie Comer in the role of Furiosa. However, it was after seeing the Edgar Wright movie Last Night in Soho that director George Miller was very keen on casting Anya Taylor-Joy in the role of Furiosa. Admittedly, I've not actually seen the other Mad Max movies that feature Mel Gibson in the lead role, and Mad Max Fury Road was my first introduction into this world. I can see how the influence of Mad Max across cinema has impacted the post-apocalyptic genre, and I thoroughly enjoyed what Fury Road did. And looking at it as a film about how it was edited and the continuous chase sequence, it really paid off as an action movie and a piece of entertainment. It received both critical acclaim and did fairly well at the box office to merit a sequel. Although we didn't get a sequel for many years, or in this case the prequel, Furiosa, because director George Miller entered a legal battle with Warner Brothers over unpaid bonuses equating to around $7 million. So 9 years after the release of Mad Max Fury Road, we get a prequel featuring Furiosa, the character initially played by Charlize Theron. And after waiting 9 years, is the wait worth it? Quick answer is no. The world that was shown to me in Mad Max Fury Road was certainly interesting enough to dive back into, and Furiosa was a great character in the movie. Arguably she was the lead, and the story was seen through the eyes of Max, played by Tom Hardy. The story of that film was so unique, about a chase across the desert and plenty of action sequences. It just worked as a film, and it feels like it was something I'd never seen before. But Furiosa goes back to being a more traditional film with time jumps and sections of a told story. And some of the time jumps are quite significant because at the beginning of the film we have another actress playing Furiosa. Alia Brown plays a much younger version of the character, and I was surprised at how much of the story actually followed her and not Anya Taylor-Joy, who is a much bigger movie star and seems to be one of the it girls in Hollywood at this time. But I suppose that's a good thing, and as this movie was telling a much larger story, as Fury Road took place over only a couple of days, and this story kind of develops over what appears to be maybe 10 or 20 years or so, I think it's hard to know. It made sense to have two actresses playing the role, and I think Brown certainly did a good job playing this child character. Whilst watching the film, I was hyper aware that it felt like a long time had passed and Anya Taylor-Joy hadn't been seen on screen yet. And I think the film's pacing overall did suffer because it was telling a story over such a long period of time. And whilst I understand that this is necessary for the story of Furiosa, and everything in the story made sense to kind of develop the character and get her to the point where she's at in Fury Road, it just felt very long and dragged out to me. I could almost see the parts with the younger version of Furiosa, as played by Alia Brown, could have been its own 2-hour movie in itself, and then followed up by the Anya Taylor-Joy version of the story, which takes place about 2/3 of the film. Telling the character's story from her being taken from this green place, meeting up with Dr. Dementus, and then Dr. Dementus's war on Immortan Joe over a long period of time, just felt like so much to cover. And whereas comparing this to Fury Road, where you have a beat for beat for beat story going on, there's always something happening, it's always clear what's going on, this just felt a bit messed up in my opinion. And it could have been streamlined just because I feel like this film was trying to tell two stories, and this would have definitely benefited from being two films. And even George Miller said he wanted to tell this as a animated film in the Japanese anime style at first. I could have easily seen a prequel film released online, maybe of the younger Furiosa stuff, and then jumping into the action with Anya Taylor-Joy's version of the character. So I feel this film mostly suffers because it's trying to do too much over too little a time, and the film isn't short by any means necessary, it's almost 2.5 hours long. But even points of the 2/3 of the film that featured Anya Taylor-Joy as the character maybe could have been trimmed down just a little bit in my opinion. But I've only seen this film once, and I may have a different opinion on a second viewing. But when you go to the cinema and watch a film, the idea is if you are concerned about how much time has passed, you're not engaged with the movie enough, and I did feel like wanting to check the time several times during this movie. That being said, I do feel the performances given by some of the actors throughout the film is very good. Anya Taylor-Joy as this quiet protagonist, Furiosa only has about 30 lines throughout the movie, and Alia Brown was a standout as the younger version of Furiosa. Chris Hemsworth, who plays the film's villain, Dr. Dementus, seems to be having a great time playing a hammy version of an Australian sort of bandit, and I think that worked really well. It did come across as a bit cringy at first, in my opinion, but based on this world that has been developed in the last movie, I do buy his character, and the fact that he seems to be having so much fun playing Dr. Dementus and getting to use his native Australian accent did really come across well in the film, so I did really appreciate his performance, even though it seemed a bit hammy at times. One of the good things was the relationship between Anya Taylor-Joy's Furiosa and Tom Burke's character Praetorian Jack. It isn't developed too much in the story, and they don't talk too much, but I think that worked well, in my opinion. And I would have liked to have seen it develop a tiny bit more, but from what we got, I did really enjoy the relationship of how they were introduced and then became friends. And in the movie, they don't really become lovers in any way, and that's kind of a refreshing take, similar to the relationship we got between Max and Furiosa in Fury Road. One of my highlights in the film is a sequence that takes place at the Bullet Farm, which features Anya Taylor-Joy and Tom Burke playing their respective characters, and they are ambushed by Dr. Dementus's men, as played by Chris Hemsworth. The action and the stunts for that part stood out more to me than a sequence early in the film that is more akin to what we got in Fury Road. I feel like what they did with the Bullet Farm was much more interesting. Maybe it's because we'd seen the long chase from Fury Road already, and they were trying to emulate that with a scene early in the movie. But this attack on the Bullet Farm really stood out to me as one of the highlights of the film. And the fact that the characters aren't talking to one another directly, it's just action, and people have pointed out that could we have a silent movie from Mad Max, and I think that is potentially on the cards in the future. You could cut out a lot of the dialogue in this film, and parts of it would make sense, I suppose. Some of the shots and cinematography of the film are great, similar to what we got with Fury Road back in 2015. However, this film did appear to be much more CGI heavy than Fury Road, and it is 9 years on, so I would have liked to have seen that sort of blended a lot better. Because if you look back at what we got in Fury Road, there was a lot of computer-generated imagery used in order to hide and enhance the landscapes, but throughout watching that film, I didn't believe that any of it was CGI, to be honest. I was so invested in the story, and I think the effects were just a lot better than this. There are times in this film that you definitely go, oh, that's on a green screen, and that's a little disappointing considering what we got in Fury Road. The editing of this film is very different to what we got in Fury Road as well. Margaret Sixill, George Miller's wife, was the editor on Fury Road and this movie, and it did win the editing Oscar back in 2015, but the editing of this, because it's not one continuous chase, seems to be less impressive. There were scenes from Fury Road where the action is always in the centre, and if it diverges off, the next cut will always have you focused on that same point, and that worked really well for a film like Fury Road. I didn't notice anything like that in this film, and it just seems like the standard editing. Nothing stood out to me. It wasn't bad editing in any case, but I wasn't as impressed with the type of editing that was done in this movie than I was in Fury Road. Overall, I did have high expectations for this film, and admittedly, I am a little bit let down with this film. I will probably give this another chance when it comes to streaming or to physical media, and I intend to go back and watch Fury Road quite soon because this did remind me that Mad Max Fury Road was a great piece of cinema. Disappointingly, this film seems to be doing very poor at the box office, and there was talk about Mad Max The Wasteland, a sequel or a prequel to Fury Road as well, bringing back Tom Hardy's character Max. But with a disappointing box office, that may now no longer happen. Although, if they could end up doing a much cheaper version of Mad Max, and cut the budget significantly, maybe we could get to see Mad Max The Wasteland. And from what I've read and heard about the story of that film or what it's going to be, they could do it a bit cheaper, well, considerably cheaper than what Furiosa and Fury Road cost. The film has been out for quite a while, and it's not going to be showing in cinemas for much longer. And I do feel that even if you really enjoyed Fury Road, this film will be somewhat of a letdown for you. So maybe wait till this comes to physical media or video on demand or streaming services before you watch it. It is a film that was great to watch on the big screen, but the story and the pacing just didn't work for me, and I am somewhat disappointed that this film didn't live up to my very high expectations. Maybe if my expectations weren't as high as what we got in Fury Road, I would have enjoyed the film a lot more. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Furiosa if you've seen it. Please let me know in the comments below, give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and make sure to click the bell icon to receive notifications for all of my videos. That's it for now. Thanks for tuning in.